The beach. Native habitat of seagulls, tourists, sand crabs, attractive tanners, and much, much more.
G'day mate, my name is Dr. Sand and Socks, and today we're going to learn about the exciting world of soft substratum beaches, also known in layman's terms as the beach. Now, before I get too in-depth, let me clarify. There are all kinds of beaches with different compositions. Here are a few.
There are rocky beaches, there are black sand beaches made from broken down lava rock, there are green sand beaches from broken down olivine or peridot, which also comes from volcanic activity. There are white sand beaches made from broken down pieces of coral and seashells, and bread sand beaches
made by me. But you see, the most amazing substance is actually something close to home, and that is essence of mountain. It may take weeks to get out of your hair and underwear, but giant boulders come off the mountain and take hundreds of thousands of years broken down by ice and plants to become sand. But it's not the same all the way around on the beach. You see, there are all kinds of pressures that group species to live in recognizable bands along different zones. The fancy scientific term for this is
zonation. Think of zonation as like walking into a gym. If you're really fast, you're probably going to hang out by the treadmills a lot. If you have a lot of upper body strength, though, you're probably going to want to avoid the treadmill and go towards the dumbbells and lifts and stuff like that. If you are none of this, you're probably going to be hanging out by the entrance, eating power bars. That way, everybody is hanging out in their own section of the gym based on their best physical attributes, and where they are most comfortable. Zonation has many effects on an ecosystem/habitat. In the case of soft-substratum beaches, zonation is horizontally related to distance from the shoreline, as well as vertically depending on how deep in the sand you go. One stressor causing zonation is salinity. As the water evaporates, salt is left behind, meaning that there's more salt further out from the shoreline. Submission and exposure is another powerful stressor, so organisms have adapted to avoid desiccation, fancy word for drying out, by burying themselves deeper closer to water pockets or sealing up tight. Temperature also increases further away from the shoreline, and sand is much hotter on the surface where the sun hits it. These are all of the abiotic or physical stressors, but zonation is also biotic. Competition between species and individuals is common. Not so much for space because there's plenty of it, but competition for food, like a college dorm room. Speaking of food, being lunch is another biotic stress. Take happy little bivalve thing, for example. On the surface, or too close to the surface, it's easy prey for birds, but the trade-off is being too deep in the sand leads to anoxic conditions, meaning that there's no oxygen. Oxygen can get into the system through burrowing, but many of these organisms have tubes called siphons, which they stick out of the sand like a sand snorkel. Of course, these animals also want their space, so some benthic species turn to chemical warfare, excreting high concentrations of bromine-containing aromatic compounds, which are toxic to other infaunal organisms. There are a few walks or burrowers of life for sandy beach natives. Because there are no primary producers, nutrition comes from either washed-up kelp or dead stuff, so detritivores or decomposers as well as deposit feeders are the most prolific here. They scavenge the surface or shallow water. Carnivorous or omnivorous suspension feeders may also take refuge between sand and use net-like appendages to filter prey. A few other things to note: the system fluctuates with the tide, and there's nothing to hold on to out here, so there's almost no attached species or vegetation. That's all for zonation.
And now, the question you may be wondering is, who lives there?
All kinds of things, like swarms of kelp flies, lots of crustaceans like beach hoppers, beach pillbugs, and mole crabs. There are also things called bloodworms, but don't worry, they're called bloodworms because of their color, not because they actually drink blood or anything. And those animals are prey for birds, such as the sandpiper here. And within the sandy flats, you'll also find animals like this hungry halibut, this adorable sea cucumber, this sneaky sculpin hanging out with a purple sea pansy, right next to this big blobby thing, which is a midshipman. Within some soft sediments, you can also find tube worms like this, which can burrow really far into the ground and then retract themselves into the sand. But that doesn't make you safe. This predatory animal called a cuskeel is sticking his head out in this picture. Different species of rays will also use this area as a hunting ground.
Now you know the basics of soft substratum beaches/shores. Now remember, we need to take care of these places. So if you have trash or you come to picnic, make sure you take it out with you.
Nutrition comes from either washed up kelp or sediments, so detritivores or nutrition comes from either washed up kelp or sediments, so detritivores excreting high. What did I write?